Soy facing like a boss. Hi, guys. Here we go. There we are. There are the faces. Smiling faces, smiling faces. Sometimes they don't tell the truth. Smiling faces, smiling faces. Sometimes. Hi, guys. So don't really have anything planned for today. Don't have any graphs. Don't worry about that. Just having a chill, wind down day, hanging out. What do you guys? What is going on? I haven't really been online. What's been the big news other than the hilarious mercenary mishaps of our friends in the deep state, the goof 'em ups that everyone's having down in Venezuela with the Danny McBride characters who tried to grab Nicolas Maduro with a cartoon butterfly net. We're going to do a crossover with the QAnon guys next week. The QAnon Anonymous podcast, not the Patriots who decode the proofs. Has there been a Q proof in a while? It seems like the whole. It's kind of funny because you'd think that the COVID-19 thing would really go to their benefit. They'd be like, oh great, we can, this is it. But they had the problem that one, I'm not sure how much Q talked about in any kind of legible way there being, he didn't really talk about those things. He didn't talk about there being a virus or anything. So it's like, hey, if Q is so smart, what the fuck? And then there's the fact that even though Trump's president, you'd think a time like a massive illness outbreak like this would be a perfect opportunity to round up the sickos, and they're not doing it. They're not rounding up the sickos, so they must be very confused. So I'm looking forward to talking to those guys about what the latest attempts at parsing reality are from those people. I think that for Epstein stuff, I think for any of the fun conspiracy stuff, you should treat conspiracy shit the way that you treat like one of your favorite food indulgences. You shouldn't give up things that you really enjoy to eat, but you should eat them in moderation and certainly as part of a balanced diet. You can apply that to media in all ways, but you can certainly apply it to the way that you construct like political reality in your head. And the great thing about conspiracy stuff is that it's just, even if it's not true, it's the shadow of what's really happened. Nothing that Oliver Stone says about the military-industrial complex taking over the government after the Kennedy assassination is wrong. It's just a question of whether or not Kennedy was actually killed by them. Same thing with CIA mind control. I mean, what the hell do you call this massive digital infrastructure that controls every element of our like symbolic language, and which is basically at the beck and call only of corporate titans and the deep state intelligence agencies? How do you not think of the internet as just like a giant MK Ultra experiment? And it's like none of that has to be literally true, but if you recognize the contours, you can apply them to your real life, and it makes you realize things like, oh, this is not a democracy. Oh, these institutions are not legitimized by who votes for who. You get that truth, and the lighter you hold and the less you indulge in like your conspiracy stuff needing to be technically true, the more it can help you contextualize information and new things that happen to you. But like the conspiracy cranks are the people who insist, no, this isn't just something we can speculate about. This is something that we can, not only we know exactly what happened, but I am the one who actually knows what happened. And those people have become too brittle in their thinking to accommodate anything else. Like take a guy like Grover Furr. Anybody know Grover Furr? Grover Furr is the king of the Stalin apologist academic tradition. He's at a university in New Jersey, and he writes these books about how the entire Khrushchev secret speech was a lie, that everybody who died in the Great Purges was killed by Yezhov without Stalin knowing it, and that the Ukrainian famines basically didn't happen or were grossly exaggerated. And to the extent that they killed people, Stalin didn't know about it. Now, of course, he's trying to do that to justify Stalin, right? Like he's trying to get people to think Stalin was a good guy. But he's acknowledging that all this bad stuff happened. Well, if Stalin was a good leader and a good guy to guide the great ship of state, the great helmsman, why the hell was all that bad shit happening? Like how and it starts from, but the thing is, he starts from a good premise. He starts from the premise of, I'm going to defend Stalin against the Robert Service, Robert Conquest, neocon slander of the Soviet Union and the entire Bolshevik project. And you should. And Stalin needs to be contextualized. I mean, my God, I would start by pointing out, you want to cry about the Holodomor? How about the fact that the fat piece of shit who is supposed to be like the epic win-bacon member of the Big Three, Winston Churchill, allowed 3 million people to die in Bengal of starvation and yucked it up the entire time? I mean, contextualize it. That's where you like try to extract the truth and like remove the sting of the slander. But Grover got so fixated on the question of Stalin's personal virtue, as if that matters, that he just like rearranged his entire project to not even be about that anymore, because he didn't hold the truth loosely enough as in his hand. And that's the same thing with conspiracy stuff. So like, yeah, I believe the Epstein stuff represents some degree of a real network of real rich pedophiles who really ritually abuse children. Where they do it, how often they do it, which ones do it, I don't know. And neither does anybody else who speculates. You can build up, like, you know, the artifice of your instinctive faith in it through the accumulation of like meaningful details. I mean, Epstein is really the gift that keeps on giving in that respect. He's been dead for almost a year now, or 9 months. And there's still stuff happening that's spilling out about his insane connections to every element of the what you got from the deep state. You've got Silicon Valley. You've got the NGO para governments of the Gateses. That's also tied in with the coronavirus vaccine. It's just a rich onion and worth up. But like the whole time, you don't have to fucking say no. Because if it's not true, I'm wasting my time. It's only wasting your time if it matters whether it's true or not. And then since you're trying to build an ideology and not like you're not serving on a jury, just kind of let it hang and just find what really is convincing. So you can let the stuff that you believe because of motivated reasoning fall away. Because then you're not convincing yourself it's true all the time to fill in the gaps of your information. How would you start a mercenary company? That's a good question. I should probably get one. Sounds like it'd be fun. That's funny. Rojava is a model for post-American balkanization. I mean, that is obviously one of the better case scenarios if that were to happen. I don't know. I was thinking about the whole like coalescing doomer wave now, you know, as we really look into the face that the government and corporations are, and the state is willing to just normalize 9/11 every day to maintain a market economy, and not even like to get to permanently overthrow it and have themselves executed. No, they could still manage the transition. They're just too incompetent and too brittle in their power to risk letting that happen, letting it out of their, letting it be shown to people for even a year that you could manage the economy without market signals. So they're gonna just let everyone die. They're gonna Thanos snap everybody, because that's the Thanos snap. Thanos is the ultimate neoliberal, because he's got the Thanos glove and he could do anything. But he is so conditioned by neoliberalism that it's like, yeah, no, there's too many people, not enough resources, got to kill them all. When you could wish for any number of changes to the material circumstances that would make it more harmonious for people to live together. And that's what we're not. That's where we all are. I mean, they weren't fucking around with there is no alternative. And like we're looking, honestly, what we're looking at more than anything is at the fucking enormity of our powerlessness in the face of this. That's really what is freaking people out. It's just how fucking powerless people are. And how we're going to let it happen. And we're going to end up blaming each other. We're going to end up feeling guilty and going to be mad at others to some degree and going to put almost none of that energy towards like wresting power from these Draculas. And that's not any of our faults. Because coronavirus is like just breathtakingly symbolic creature. I mean, it comes out, it attacks this system, this late capitalist system, and it basically replicates every fault line. It presses on every fault line to push things in a bad direction. So like at the material level, it comes to an economy, the United States, that's first of all run by a corrupt cabal of incompetent criminals. And I'm not even talking about the Trump administration. I'm talking about the permanent bureaucracy and the basically semi-permanent party apparatchiks who make up both parties of Congress, both sides of the aisle, obviously, all the way through all three branches of government, just topped with a little cherry of the ridiculous orange Cheeto Man. So you have that, and then you have on top of that a fucking a gig-based fucking economy of people working tenuous, precarious service industry jobs to just make up for the deficit or make up for the need for consumption that Americans are required by the rest of the world to be as the consumer of last resort. We got to keep eating. If it piles up too much, the economy falls apart. You keep eating. Hogs, keep eating. Well, boom. Now, at the material level, you can't get service. You can't go out. You can't go to the Uncle Pete's Trop Sloth. Slop Trough, rather. You can't go down to the Pizza Gorge. And of course, that just makes people who are wildly alienated and basically get almost all of their pleasure in life from direct physical sensation of fat, carbohydrates, and alcohol. That's not a good combination. And they have to stay home. And the economy has a huge demand cycle. And then you say, great, this is the material conditions that should lead to a revolution, right? Like that was the hopeful pill when this started. People aren't going to put up for that. But look at what the effect of the disease is. Just as it affects the material conditions along its weakest fault line, which is the fact that it's a service economy, it attacks our political culture at its weakest fault line, which is that it's wildly atomized. Like one of the big reasons that Bernie failed is because the citizens do not have the motor connection between people who have enough free time and enough alienation to form a political opposition to capitalism that's coherent enough to be effective, and the people who are in the communication flow to even hear that, or like at the level and have the level of like good faith investment in strangers on the internet or the government to invest any of their will towards it. And now we're literally in a situation where we've created a fucking caste system of people who are too busy running around, i.e. too materially alienated, too labor alienated, too busy running around risking their life to survive, and everybody else stuck in their houses like veal calves with this vast amount of alienated leisure time. And they're literally pressed against it, like out from each other. They are socially polarized by the actual, by the the effect, the virological effect of corona. And so now you've got two forces pushing the economy into greater distress, but also pushing the ability to fight back against it is dissipated by the pressure against people physically from even being able to talk to one another. Because as we've discussed, internet isn't going to do it. We've discussed, that's done. It has to move to the real world, and just as the real world reasserts itself, everybody is literally behind their doors and unable to talk to each other. And more invested in symbols. I mean, my God. They're now making, like, SNL, Saturday Night Live, a Zoom show. Do you think that's going back? It's not going all the way back. None of this is going all the way back. So that's why there's a lot of room for despair. But, like, something's going to shift. Something's going to shift. There's going to be a big old shift happening here in the coming years. And the thing is, because everything is so brittle, and because our political system in particular is so brittle, and because we spend so much time of our emotional investment in politics around those symbols that are most fragile, like the United States and all that, as a concept, we forget that there's another representation of, like, the fragility of America, and it's the size of its economy, like the raw size of the American economy. And the simple fact is that even with Corona, and even with thousands dead, even with the huge demand shortfall, even with the Great Depression too, with just pure neoliberalism, there's like an entropic rate that economy can, like, lose power, unless there's some massive intervention, like the coronavirus turns into the Black Plague, or, you know, we get nuked or something to destroy a bunch of capital instantly. The capital has to go out into the rest of the world at a certain rate. So America's decline from this point is clearly and obviously, it's not even a question of whether it's going to happen. We're in the decline phase. We are on one of those Plinko board zigzaggy decline phases, you know, and the thing is, this is going to bring another decline phase, but at any one of those, the conditions can shift enough that all of a sudden there's political friction again, and you can do something. So the assumption that because everything looks so brittle now, even with bad things happening, that those bad things have to be the end, that those bad things mean there's no way to arrest decay, that is incorrect also. And of course, it's a liberal excuse to disengage from politics completely and let the world go to hell while you drown yourselves in luxuries. Adam Curtis a few years ago described how any compelling vision for a new world would require something that can marry subjective mystery and scientific reality back together again. Agreed, disagreed. Wow. You know, the funny thing is I didn't see that movie. I'm not sure which one that is. But yeah, no, the pandemic's going to be just the same, only worse. But the thing is that the worse is going to cause a new alignment that might bring out a different crisis. And that's the thing. You got to remember, because, like, there still has to be a function that makes the worst happen, and that is, like, you know, the punctuation. He was interviewing Russell Brand. I would have read that a few years ago, and I would have been like, that's absolutely true. But then I would have just been like, yeah, but how? And then it would have been like, yeah, well, somebody better figure that out. Oh, well. I'm off to epically own Ross Douthat. But now I'm like, oh, God, yeah, of course. That's literally what I've been thinking through this whole time. But the problem is that at that level of abstraction, there's nothing to do about it, so you end up being paralyzed. You have to start from the grill. You have to start from the table in front of you and deciding what you're going to put on it. But the thing is that you say you need to put, and this is the problem. Like, you got tradcasts will say, yeah, you need to put religion back into the material world. But the way they want to do that is they want to take the material reality of, like, the brittle and disgusting institution of the Catholic Church and just bash people over the head with it. Well, that's not going to work. That you're just gonna end up, like, being another arm of disciplinary capitalism. They're just gonna sell rosaries instead of fleshlights. It doesn't change anything, because people's relationship to the religion hasn't changed organically, which can only occur over time when they have an opportunity, when people have an opportunity to reflect. The only thing when we're this alienated materially, globally, and how is going to be to reduce material alienation. And so nobody's going to be able to go back to church and have kids again like these tradcasts want if the fucking boot isn't taken off the neck of people in this country and around the world. And then you can have like a genuine piety and sense of purpose and social cohesion emerge. But that means someone has to move first, and the person who has to move first is the person who has the foot on the neck. And that is, I'm sorry, it's not the happy merchant. It's not Hollywood degeneracy. It's not cultural Marxists, which is all just begging the question. It's capitalism. Along that axis of who is making it harder for people to be spiritual, it is capitalism. So any of these tradcaths who want to marry anything to the idea that, no, we can do this through markets, or basically through supporting market politics, and advancing market politics, is absurdly wrong. So it's like, all spiritual problems have a material base and vice versa. And the spiritual problem is spiritual emptiness. The solution is reduction of material alienation and spiritual alienation in equal measure. But it's like, well, that's both things. Yeah, but where is the plane? The plane is material. So you start with material. So anybody who's tradcathing on the internet is just LARPing along with every other tanky with the fucking Stalin avatar or anybody else. They're all just playing pretend. None of them really believe in that because they're not acting in a way that would bring it about. They're acting in a way that will perpetuate and suspend. If it were, like, this is where the cat comes in. I hate to say this, but if everyone reacted that way, if everybody decided to fight for traditional Catholicism online or bring back the Soviet Union online, guess what? It would and their practice for doing that was fighting on the computer over it. Like, if everybody had your beliefs, but their beliefs were fighting over the computer about it, guess what? You'd still live in neoliberal hell. Think about that. Everybody who's like a political practice is yelling at other people on the computer to sharpen their identity. If everyone did that, not everyone believed what you believed, but everybody believed what you believed and acted on it in the same way. Like if they were just snapped into a place. It's the same world as ours, so it's not like the material conditions have changed, but now everyone believes what you believe. Everyone's a tradcath, congratulations. But they also have your ingrained need to establish tradcathery through the internet or through epic Maoist third worldism or anything. And guess what? Neoliberalism that you snap back into would persist. It would change a little bit, but it would be around the edges. See, I don't understand how that's supposed to be disagreement. Suicide rates decreased during times of war because people felt their suffering served a greater purpose. Exactly, they were less spiritually alienated. Because they were more materially invested. They're suffering. Work is not labor, is not necessarily spirit deadening. Dead labor is spirit deadening. Dead labor. If you're fighting against a war that you believe in, or believe in to the extent that you want to see your family live through, that's because you believe what you're doing. And so even if you are in material hardship, your degree of alienation is less. So yeah, but that's the same process. And it's generated at the material level. I got all peppery there, guys. I'm sorry. I'm trying to yell less in general. I'm trying to let things flow through me, but I'm a little off kilter today for a few reasons. Sorry. Hoping to get back onto the escapement. Is neoliberalism still a useful term if what we're going to see following the pandemic is a retrenchment toward globalism, from globalism towards protectionism? And yeah, it'll just be the plane will be different. like neoliberalism doesn't treat everybody the same. Obviously, ask anyone from a fucking an African country, or India, the global South. Ask anybody who got killed in the Bangladeshi fucking sweatshop that Matt Iglesias defended. Under these conditions, it doesn't treat everybody well. It pretends to, but it doesn't actually. And so if the global market breaks into regional markets that aren't able to connect to each other anymore because of some sort of massive breakdown, if global warming and the pandemic have that degree of dissolution of structural legitimacy, then that's just going to reproduce itself in that group, which is why the white nationalists are idiots. If you still have capitalism as the driver of your economy, you're just going to find a new group of people. Look at what John Cornyn did in Texas. This guy, he tells everybody, he says, hey, if you're fat or you have a heart attack and you die of COVID, you didn't really die of COVID, you died of your own sinful behaviors. But he's referring to his own Texas constituents because a greater threat to profit exists. That same phenomenon is going to exist in your white havens. So neoliberalism is still going to be at that point it's just capitalism, because neoliberalism, the neoliberal element of that is the dream of it becoming global. Like the globe really is the symbol of neoliberalism, because that is the dream. Is yes, markets obviously. Like it's always been yes, markets obviously since the beginning of history. But yes, markets obviously given these restraints. Yes, markets obviously, but like all these things, Keynesianism, whatever. It's all yes, markets obviously, but what about the real world we live in? Neoliberalism is no, markets. We have the whole world. See the globe. So if that broke up, you would just have smaller subunits. Since they were aware that other places still existed, it couldn't be neoliberalism anymore, because those places are, contributing in some way, because they'd be interacting presumably to undermine like the establishment of a market. So like neoliberalism is a totalized state, or a dream of a totalized state that wouldn't persist in like some fractured thing. But the logic, the extractive logic of that hyper developed state of capitalism, where it's been honed to a fucking Hanzo steel edge that cuts through everything, that's going to still be there. And it's going to cut up every one of these traditionalist societies. It's going to chop up all those Hungarians who think that Orban has their best interests at heart. It's going to chop up all the Brexit, all the Brexit gammons, if they fall out of the purview of capitalism as it emerges. If they are not needed as consumers, and then they'll just find a new axis of back justified differentiation to justify why they deserved it. See, that's the problem, is that like obviously the end state of communism is global communism, as it has to be. I mean, if neoliberalism is the dream, is the nightmare of a globe reduced by markets to destruction and desiccation, the dream is a totalized communal state that harmonizes flow of resources and protects the homeostasis between species and humans and the natural world. And right now, the one where it breaks down and shatters down into smaller and smaller units until we went from, it's like a ride on it's like the American Eagle at Six Flags. It's like early slave agricultural empires, feudalism, capitalism, crisis of inputs, basically crisis of profit, the need for profit in the system. It's essentially the point where the need for profit in the system of capitalism collapses against the degree of entropy in that system, i.e. the exhaustion of resources, the alienation of human spirit and material, condition. And when that happens, what has happened in the past, the next stage, hypothetically, the one we're all hoping for, is a move towards the capitalism now, or towards some sort of socialism. Now if the momentum in the direction up is insufficient, it's going to fall back down, and it's not going to go into something we don't recognize. It's going to be a new version of feudalism, a synthesized techno-feudalism that has the social characteristics of feudalism, but now with the economic efficiency and symbolic efficiency and material deadness, frankly, of capitalism, which is essentially the worst possible state. You can't think of a worse state than this, because you've got a situation where people are as cowed and confused and unable to organize effectively against power as they are more than they ever were under capitalism when it became hegemonic, at the mercy of a governing ideology that has at its disposal a refined version of the Hoe and the Mott and Bailey Castle that is purely digital, purely synthetic, operated at the press of a button, and essentially guarantees that human conditions will be at that point reduced down to the status of slavery again, slave empires. Which this is, see, by the way, that is the singularity that the fucking dope ass like accelerationist Nick Land types, that's what they're praying for. Basically, they're betting that that's not just one result, but the inevitable result, and so they're basically coping with that. Like, that's what Nick Land shit is. It's the ultimate like fake cope. It's like, yeah, sure, we're all going to be one with a demonic robot lizard god, but that's cool. That's fine. I like it, actually. But obviously, that's an absurd ridiculousness, because we're too early in the process, way too early in the process to say, oh yeah, no, this is the moment when it turns. There are so many different variables, because so many different things can happen. And there's so many different directions that developmental curve can take. It's just, at the end of the day, the black pill is a failure of imagination. It's a failure of having the spiritual will to pursue the question to its fullest extent. At which point you'll realize any non-communist teleological approach to human history is faulty, because it doesn't take contingency and the dialectical driver of history into account. It does not accommodate space-time. So throw it in the garbage. Throw it in the garbage. If you got a teleology in there and it isn't guided towards fully automated communism, whatever that might be, not in the near term, not the idea that it's going to happen in your lifetime, that's absurd, but that it is a potential end state for human existence. And if Nick Land, by saying, no, it's going to be the tech hell singularity, well, I'm sorry, dude, then there is a potential, if there's a potential tech hell singularity, to the exact same extent, there is a potential tech heaven singularity. Sorry, there is. And you might say, oh, not really. At the level of abstraction we're talking about, how many hundreds of years? I know the timeline is going to be much faster than it got to get here, because we've compounded time into these technological innovations that basically concentrate time into a weapon. That's what technology often is. But even with hundreds of years, the idea that, no, we're in the world where this all falls apart, it's cope. You're giving up. You're giving up. You're giving up on the problem. And why? Because you trigger the libs. You gave up on the problem, the real rigor of this problem, because it was more fun to trigger the libs online. Isn't that it, Nick? And that's why they made the wrong call. That's why all these guys went the wrong code, because they were too invested in mechanical truth to see the push and pull between spirit and matter. Oh boy, I'm getting over the top here. Never mind. But yes, so that's me saying no doom pill, because you're always in a contingent moment of history. because everybody else look back at all history and you'll find the contingency in it at some level, and you just have to know where that is for you to put your shoulder against the wheel. Because why are you triggering the libs? Because you cannot get full satisfaction from a moment of labor, of pressing against something, of actually getting friction. You prefer the fake, sterile friction of going on the internet. Actually, there is no. Somebody asked, "What's the difference between grill pill and cleaning your room?" There isn't. I'm attempting to. This is essentially going to provide some. I hope for some people, this is providing like a challenge, a dialectical challenge to the Peterson stuff, which we didn't do last time. I'll admit it, because I wasn't thinking that way. I was just thinking of his greater threat, because everyone's beliefs were so brittle on the internet. It's like, oh no. The essential insight that Jordan Peterson had was that you can't tell someone to do something; they have to want to do it themselves. That's it, and the way you. The only way to prove that to someone is to ask them to do something small and then see it develop in their own life, and so they convince themselves, and it wasn't you. That's the central insight of Clean Your Room. And nobody talked about it like that, because to give him any credit was to say that, yes, actually women are chaos lizards who need to be kept in cages, or whatever the fuck. But the reality is that if you don't start from that, you're fucked. And like, I guarantee you, 99%, and the thing is that mine's better, because I guarantee you the majority of those fucking Clean Your Room guys, they ended up just as miserable, if not more so, because what was Jordan Peterson's ultimate explanation for their misery? It wasn't that they live in misery because they're incarnated flesh, and that their duty in life is to reduce the amount of suffering in the world. No, it's that there's a demonic cabal of Marxist college professors telling girls that they shouldn't date them. No amount of cleaning your room is going to get you to a point where you can satisfactorily press against that truth, unless you fill a gym bag with Tech Nines and go to a fucking college campus. Because it's abstract, because it's faulty. It's just a faulty thing. And because it's faulty, what do they end up doing? If they don't grab a gun and go shoot people, they go and try to take down those Marxist professors online. Because Jordan Peterson only told them one pole of this wiggling truth nugget thing that you're trying to grip together. He was saying, yes, you need to be self-motivated. But you need to be self-motivated to go on the computer and tell these fucking feminists to shut up and to tell them to read my book. Boom. You're right back on the computer, and everything I've talked about reifying all the shit, banging your head against the wall, seeing your degree of investment in any level dissipate and be replaced with nothing. But I'm saying we are bound. We are bound materially. We are bound materially, and that means that we can only act materially. And that's why Clean Your Room, even though it starts from the same premise as the grill pill, is fraudulent. And mine, like I said, you can find out for yourself. I'm not trying to tell anybody anything other than, if they want to be less miserable, try to find something that they can do in their lives. Yeah, DBT is a part of it for sure. Whatever like thing in your head that can act as a bridge to legibility is something that you should incorporate. I mean, I'm not going to judge. I don't care. Yeah, a current affair. Yeah, the McRibs back guy. I mean, that guy really should have caused people to be more introspective, you know? Because, I mean, either way, that's disturbing, right? Like, if you're not going to think about it too much, you're still going to have to wonder how many of my fellow Rosa-Mosey comrades are just, like, on the edge of some sort of snap, some sort of break. How can I trust their owns? how can I trust their cool? How can I trust that their memes aren't counterfeit? Or at least to think like, damn, doing all that posting online really did not help this guy at all develop better political opinions, because usually your politics should not include shooting up a bunch of people at a bar, including your sister, for God's sakes. Or no, I'm sorry. I think this is trans brother. I'm not sure. You forget. You got to assume all these. I'm sorry. Someone asked a question about the thing about energy and resources. You have to imagine at some point that all systems are closed, and that includes economic systems. And at this point, you can assume that the economic system is closed. As for now, the economic system is a closed system, except for like photosynthesis. At that level of the sun energy being brought in, and like the magnetic poles. It's a closed system. It's a global economic system. The exceptions are negligible enough to be essentially friction. I might end up living in the woods. I have no idea. The thing is that you can't really plan too far ahead, and that's scary at times like this when everything feels so liquid. But it's like it doesn't change things. You planning and fretting about a future that you can't directly try to bring about will not change the urgency of your feelings about it. You have to channel them productively. Right, because you got to remember, it's like, yeah, we still have photosynthesis and sun coming in, but we also have greenhouse gases literally cutting off and like reflecting the heat back. So it's like, unless we are able, unless somebody wants to replace the carbon economy with like a wildly more efficient solar energy grab, we're going to have a crisis point because consumption just isn't going down. Because consumption is how authority is maintained in the West. Yeah, see, everyone's offering me just, and everyone's saying I'm wrong. It's like, yeah, I am wrong because I don't know that much about science. You can check. I don't know, but I just know that is the mental picture to help you bring down to the size of things like the economy. The specifics of it, I don't know because I'm not a science man. And any objection anybody wants to talk about, that's a category because you see the way that systems rise and fall and collapse. They are all mirrors of each other. Oh boy, I'm getting crazy. Never mind. I'm getting too in the weeds. Delete all of this. I gotta stop looking at the thing. I get the chat. I get distracted. But the thing is the problem with degrowth. People say we need to degrowth. Well, what is the political valence of that? You got to get people on your side to have less of a consumer experience when the consumer experience is the whole total of their commitment to the system that they live in. That's the challenge. And saying degrowth is one thing. Making degrowth something that is politically palatable is different. There has to be a reduction of consumption in the West just by virtue of people won't want to do it as much. It's not going to be like people are like, oh, it's you need and the thing is, it's under neoliberalism. Yeah, like degrowth in the West, it would be Soylent and those Roach candy bars from Snowpiercer. Neoliberal degrowth is, yeah, genocidal. Like neoliberal anything is going to be genocidal as resource constraints and and climate change instability ratchets up. But a socialist degrowth would just happen naturally because people wouldn't need as much stuff because they wouldn't need to be replacing their alienated spirit. So the way to talk about it is to talk about like the first step. Like, so don't talk about degrowth because now you're arguing about whether degrowth is good or not. Oh, good. This is useful. Work from degrowth to politics and then start over again. Work from anything. And it's like, no, you need more tech. Yes, you need more tech and the tech needs to be socialized. Work from there to politics. Don't argue on the abstract level of an ideology. I'm just saying that that's not going to be productive as a conversation with somebody else. If you want to think about those things in abstract terms, go for it. But if you're going to talk to somebody else, you're going to just end up arguing about semantics, I swear to God. Because at the end, you have to reduce everything down to what is the material condition, but most importantly, what is the direct act we can do in the present moment to advance it in the good direction. And those are that's a different question than where we're trying to get to. So those are two arguments that should be had, but they should not determine present action. And I feel like people have substituted arguing for like which brand of communism, what flavor, what type of socialism will work. And the thing is, you can only refine that so much online. Eventually it has to turn into action. And if you're taking the action at that abstract level to now, you're going to get frustrated and give up again and go back to the computer because it's not applicable. It's a level of abstraction that is not related to your daily life. So you've got to work back from your conclusions. Degrowth is a correct conclusion under some circumstances. Green, like an industrial job guarantee and like a new industrial revolution is also true and necessary to an extent. You have to bring them back down to the level of politics to move forward enough to know what the mix will be when the moment comes that it becomes something to enact. Woo! Right, when and where. And that is going to be determined in the future. So we have to determine in the now how to create a space where the left is as strong as possible. How to get to a point where people are willing to act on their belief in some symbolized concept that is boiled down to a coalition of humans willing to take action. We are both. We are waiting for the moment at the symbolic level, but we're acting to bring it about at the material level. And the thing is that we're moving towards a goal, but we're moving it's like we got a carrot on a stick in front of us. We got to watch our feet, though. You want to look at the carrot once in a while to make sure that it's still there and it didn't fall off the stick or get blown off by wind or a bird took it. But you have to keep if you're on a treacherous terrain, which we are, you got to keep your eyes on your feet. Or else you're going to trip. See, everyone's asking me, how can we do it? I don't know. Because it's not at that level yet. We're not at the abstract level. The left isn't at a level of power to consider degrowthing anything. People couldn't even degrowth the mold. I couldn't even degrowth the mold in my own damn bathroom. Am I right, folks? The left is in a position to do nothing, to act in no way because it doesn't have power. So it must build power. That answer to that question is too close at hand to the people who need to do it to be answered in the etheric plane. So yeah, I'm basically I'm kicking the can down the road because this is just such an unstable moment. It feels wildly unstable. But the thing is, there are spontaneous reactions. You know? Like the 1905 Russian Revolution, obviously not comparable in a lot of different ways to our current situation. At every level, all of the political parties that had been trying to agitate against Tsardom were completely shocked when it broke out. It was all through spontaneous action. They had helped bring it about through their agitation, partially, but they were all surprised by it, and then they had to change to adapt to the new situation. And we all find ourselves in that situation. Right now, we're waiting for the North Sea Fleet to go around Africa. I do not do fat dabs. I've never done a dab. I mean, I've hit the dab, of course, as we all have. Who amongst us doesn't enjoy hitting the dab? When do I think restaurants will be back? That's an interesting one. I think it's going to be. Uh, that's really interesting because obviously they want everyone to go back to eat immediately, uh, but people don't want to die. But the good news for them is that if people do really start dying now in big numbers, the way they're predicting, people will get more used to it, and that will drive them basically to go, distract themselves more from that horror by going back to the restaurants. But there's going to be such a huge gap uh, in demand there that I don't know how long it's going to take. Uh, on their way to Iceland. I've been to Iceland. It's beautiful. But it's also a volcano. Remember that thing blew up? It's clapping time, folks. I think cities are going to stay closed for a while, but that's going to pose problems, obviously. Will the USPS die? I mean, the trajectory is it will be taken over to some degree by and replaced by something like Amazon, right? I mean, that just seems to be, unless something intervenes, and it could, it seems like that is the course. Yeah, the thing is that one thing that might honestly happen that we are underestimating the possibility of is that they do just go hog wild. That even these like neoliberal Wahhabists in charge, they just open the spigot, and instead of just doing the direct transfer to corporations they've done, actually start putting money out there, just to keep the lights on. And they would do that to the least extent they would feel like they would have to keep the situation stable, and that would be something, I guess, like finally instituting at long last an UBI, just to get enough demand in the economy to hope to start a Keynesian cycle. But that depends on a lot of things, including how bad climate change gets and how quickly. And like if oil continues to not be worth anything, that's an X factor too that I have no idea how you factor in. But it's not good either way. Yeah, I mean it would have to be like, I don't think it would be a monthly thing. That would be terrified that would turn into like social security checks. But I could see them like cutting like $1,200 checks every like 2 or 3 months on an ad hoc basis. Classic kick the can down the road, because that's all they can do. Like that's late stage capitalism is just kicking the can down the road until something happens. What you're really intervening for, if you have an interest in an investment in like the government, what you're really waiting for is another technological like inflection point that solves a lot of your underlying problems of distribution. And again, and that puts profit back into the system. But if that's not coming, and man, I don't know if it doesn't look like it, then they're gonna just keep kicking the can until the road crumbles off the end of the bridge. Ah, yes, Gelly Raubel, Hitler's niece. He probably killed her. I mean, he was Adolf Hitler, right? I mean, he's Adolf Hitler. His niece, who had a very weird relationship, mysteriously commits suicide during his rise to power. I'm not going to suspect. My first suspect isn't going to be Adolf Hitler, like the worst guy ever. Yeah, I'm just going to make a Bayesian inference that it might have been Hitler. They clapped. It's just it's losing a little energy. It's like anything, like you kind of get used to. You kind of like clap it up, and then it gets less novel, and then you either peter it out or, at some point you give it a little bit more and it takes back up again. It's in a lull right now for sure. That's very nice of you to give Hitler the benefit of the doubt. All right, I think I've realized what's happened is that when I get to the level of like abstract politics and prescriptive stuff, it gets dicey because, one, it's so far away from the reality, and two, I feel so sort of unmoored still a little bit. I'm still coming into my daily understanding of myself. So I think tomorrow, if anybody who's tuning in tomorrow who's watching, I would like to do some history questions. I had a lot of fun talking about Napoleon a couple days ago, so let's talk some movies maybe, and history would be fun tomorrow. Right. The Twitch videos are a few days behind being up on YouTube, but they're all on Twitch for now. Well, that's just it. This person says, if I'm not well read, how the hell you learn about Wallenstein? Well, that's just it. You learn about Wallenstein. You don't have to read him. Boom. Because it's not like anybody's going to really challenge you on your knowledge of him, because nobody else has read him. Nobody else has read him either, which means the people who have read him aren't going to get other people to really get it, and so they don't talk about it at a very advanced level, and so nobody feels the need to. Like, that's how, like, the incentive system of talking about politics and history and stuff on the internet is to learn less. I know that happened to me. Taiping. Ooh, that's a good one. All right, I got some stuff to think about for next week, or for tomorrow. Taiping is very good. And the thing is the discourse is all cliff notes, and like that's inevitable. It has to be. But it's what are in the notes. We picked the bad things. We picked kind of vapid things to be in the notes. Ah, the German Peasant War. That's a good one too. That one's very interesting to talk about in context of Protestantism. They're also doing a Rob Ford movie with Damian Lewis as Rob Ford, like in a fat suit. Very funny. Ooh, Cromwell. Cromwell would be very good. All right. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.